Hey there, everyone. Thank you for coming to another episode of the podcast series, The Hero in the Mirror. We have a special guest with us today, Billy DeZaya. Did I get that right? Yes. Perfect. Good. Billy DeZaya is a program manager at 1871 who's really focused in data-driven results, also looking to create an inclusive entrepreneurial ecosystem here in Chicago and help diverse underrepresented founders not only thrive but succeed in the Chicagoland business arena. Billy, it's a pleasure to have you. You came highly recommended from a previous speaker, Caesar Tondini. Caesar, if you're watching this, kudos to you. But we had Caesar. He talked about his story from selling oranges as a little kid in Brazil to being an entrepreneur here in Chicago, and he spoke highly of you. He's like, "Hey, if you have anybody else on here, it's gonna be Billy." And I don't want to steal too much of your thunder, but maybe we can jump into it and hear a little bit more about your hero's journey and kind of what brought you here today here in Chicago.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on the podcast. And I mean, shout out to Caesar, such a great person. I hope I do him justice. Just to briefly introduce myself, my name is Billy Ndizeye. I'm a program manager at 1871 currently. And to kind of describe how it got to this point, I mean, it's literally been a process of just putting one step after the other. And I'm going to go a little bit way back just to kind of paint the flow. And then definitely we're going to just go off of that. So I was born in Mozambique in 1999. Shout out to my 90s babies. And from there, I grew up a little bit in South Africa. And then I, spent some time in Zambia as well, too. And after that, my family immigrated to the United States when I was 7 years old. Now, throughout my journey, immigrated to the United States as refugees. I also came in through kind of a refugee foster care system. And so I was fostered by my grandmother, and, that sort of ecosystem of support as a young kid was such a influential part of my upbringing. And, she was somebody who was certainly had lived through the Rwandan genocide. She had, just been kind of a pillar in my own life. And so I say that the only way I got here is by putting one step in front of the other, because I saw many folks in my family do that, especially my grandmother. So if there's anybody I would have to give credit to, it would be her, because her faith, her prayers, her kind of, industriousness, especially instilling that sort of work ethic to go and, do the next thing to take care of your community and your family. She was certainly somebody who planted those seeds in us early.
That's beautiful. Yeah. We honestly never know how far our mother or grandmother's prayers have really protected us and have helped guide us.
Yeah, no, she would wake up every morning, pray for us, and then she would say, "Don't be bad." Yeah. So, try my best to, still hold on to those two key lessons.
That's great. What were some of the challenges that you faced along the way? I mean, coming from Africa, from Zambia,
Yeah.
All the way to the Midwest. You said Michigan?
Yeah. So,
out of all places?
I would say some of the biggest challenges that I probably faced was truly probably just having to build a sense of belonging in each new community that I encountered. Now, as a kid, you don't really think about it too much, right? You're sort of caught in this ever evolving journey of like everything is exciting, everything is new. And when I moved, right, I didn't think too much about being a refugee or in foster care, because they weren't labels that I necessarily use. They were like, your social worker describes you by this, and other people might say that, right? But then you notice the small things, right? Like other people had parents show up to their games, other people had parents show up to their PTAs, and having to understand and explain to people what a legal guardian is was something I learned from a kid. But then the other part of it too was just the fact that when you're a refugee, I mean, there's kind of this whole motion that nobody knows what it's like to be in the U.S. because you're all moving there at the same time. Everybody's starting from the same place where you're learning the culture, you're learning the language, but you're also learning, like, who do you want to be in this new world? Who do you want to be in this new environment, this new community? And the challenge of building community there is that when I moved to the U.S., we still moved quite a bit. And a lot of it was just because we were low income, right? We moved from apartment to apartment, and That experience in itself meant that I made friends and then lose friends as soon as I like would move and would kind of go through that same cycle. And I mean, luckily enough, I was social and I was very outgoing that I could always kind of fit in anywhere. But finding those roots like was probably one of those things that I've learned to just kind of accept that I can be embedded somewhere, I can be planted somewhere, and I can reach out to my network.
Even I think even starting, so here we're here at Northeastern at the Lyric Lounge Studio, which is a terrific space for us to kind of have these conversations. Even even a kid who went to high school here in Chicago, transitioning to Northeastern to a university, even still is a brand new landscape. I can only imagine your move and then going from community to community. But I think one thing really sticks out in that story is your resilient mindset. You're like, all right, cool. It's time to make new friends.
Well, I mean, I didn't call it resilience as a kid, and just to kind of paint it, I moved maybe 6 or 7 times when I got to the States, and at that time, in the early times, it was certainly super exciting, right? You're like, I'm making new friends every day, and I was certainly that outgoing kid. I would walk up to kids and just introduce myself. But as I got older, I mean, like the communities we lived in certainly weren't like always the safest. And what really made me determined to, push through and kind of focus on school and focus on my classes and everything comes back to my grandmother. She was that constant presence in that home that, you get home, that she's going to be worried about 2 things. One, did you pray? Did you actually like listen to God? But then 2, like, are you doing what you need to do? Are you being responsible? So she was really that underlying force that regardless of the moves that we went through, she's a constant presence. Home was not an address. It was a person. And I really would say that her steadfastness, her ability to kind of be tough on us, be able to correct us when we kind of went too far left or a little bit too far right. She was definitely that linchpin that gave us that sense that like there is something worth pushing forward. And it was because of everything she had overcame. It was because, she believed in us more than we probably believed in ourselves at that time. So yeah.
Sounds like a very strong moral compass.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
And someone to really look up to, like how tough are you? That's really great. What, when you face some of these adversities, and maybe we can even talk a little bit about your education, kind of what that looked like. You had mentioned that you had gone to Western Michigan. Can you tell us a little bit about kind of that?
Yeah. So how much of it do you want to know? Because I could go into so many different facets.
For sure. Yeah. Maybe your degree. What was your degree in?
Yeah.
What communities were you a part of there? And what led you to come here to Chicago?
Yeah. So I studied business law for my undergrad, and it was one of those degrees where I had a set of core curriculum classes, but I also got to piecemeal from all these different curriculums to kind of build my major of choice. At that time, they had just started the business law program. And for me, it seemed like the smart choice to make, because I was like, I'm not sure if I want to go for a business degree or if I ever want to go to law school, but this like split the difference, we'll get business law, call it good. During my undergrad, I got a little bit over-involved. I got over-involved in so many different ways. So I'll share the number one predictor of whether or not you're going to persist through to graduation is your degree of belongingness on a campus. It's how much you actually feel like you're meant to be there. And for me, the purpose of being there was like, I'm going to find myself. I'm going to leverage this education for sure, but I'm also going to leverage the social and community aspects to understand like, where do I fit in? Like, what am I really, really passionate about? So early on in my collegiate career, I joined student government. I became a mentor through the Seed of Scholars program. I ended up joining Black Student Union. I ended up doing a gospel choir for all
man.
4 years. I volunteered in a couple other organizations, and I became a, s- a student transition leader. So helping other students who are transitioning in college and stuff like that. And through those experiences, I mean, I got exposed to so many ambitious, smart, quite impressive people. And it almost was like a second time job, because the network that I built in college was, folks from all different types of backgrounds. But the benefit of it was that I sought those opportunities out for myself. I was proactive in, applying for opportunities to help and mentor other folks. And at the end of the day, that help also turned around and helped me as well too. It helped me kind of remind myself that at the end of this semester, it's not just about getting, on the dean's list. It was also about celebrating that you're doing it with a group of folks who have that same drive to get to graduation, right? So yeah, seeing other people succeed kind of like lit that spark in me, and it started me on my journey.
The social skills you had as a little kid.
Yeah, they came back up.
Really developed and fine tuned with you being in so many communities in college. That's great. And what was that transition going from Michigan, or actually, if I can ask a question, during that time when you were, in your university, were there any support systems that were really helpful along the way? I mean, it sounded like you were, really part of, a lot of communities, but were there any people that supported you along the way with that journey?
Yeah, there's a lot of people, and I could literally just sit here all day and kind of list them, but I'll mention just a few just to get us started. So the Seed of Scholars program was by far the number one reason why I went to Western Michigan. And if you don't know anything about former foster youth, they have about a less than 3% or 4%, depending on how you slice the cake, chance of graduating college, right? So we're talking about 400,000 people in this country. If you even account for the fact that maybe about 50% of them graduate high school, graduating college is kind of like one of these barriers where it's still quite tough. And it's tough for a lot of different reasons. But the Seed of Scholars motto had kind of 7 life domains in which they had you really focusing on. I can't list all the 7 right now, but because they had such a holistic view of a student's well-being, they had a good understanding of what are those wraparound support systems that we need in order to matriculate to graduation. And my coach, his name is Ed. Shout out to Ed. He's such an amazing coach. Did a great job of just building that personal connection with us, so that when things did get hard, I did feel like I could reach out. And things did get hard, and I did reach out. But the challenge for a lot of former foster youth is kind of like this sense of independence, right? This hyper independence. You want to take on the world by yourself because you don't know who you can trust. And that's kind of, the support in itself was readily available. They really gave us access to financial aid, to, academic tutors, to career counseling, to life counseling, like all these like subtle skills that, you don't think about it too much, but then you come out of school and you realize like you're equipped with so much good knowledge, so much good, understanding of how to live a balanced life. Now, do I live a balanced life today? I don't know, but
as adults, we try.
But having that foundation certainly gave me the confidence to say that if I do want to live independently, I know I'm not too far from my university to reach out to my campus coach, even if I'm not in school currently. I still know that they're great people. I could always reach out to them if I have any questions, but they've gave me so much that, I'm forever grateful for it.
Those coaches, man, along the way, they really do a lot of great things, a lot of wonders, not only to kind of our mental well-being, but also our spiritual well-being.
Yeah.
To have not only just like those guiding words, but to have like an actual person, that connection that you can have with an individual. And there were a lot of coaches here at Northeastern that I also had teachers that were really able to lean in to say, hey, I see you kind of falling behind.
Oh.
How can I help? And those words, like even just those words of like, all right, this person is actually looking out for you. That allows you to open up a little bit and be like, you know what? Yeah, I do need some help. And I think for men, sometimes it's difficult to admit that.
It definitely
especially when you come from, for me, a very machisto Mexican culture, men don't ask for help. You find your own way, but that limits your growth, your potential. And so it's really great to hear that you were able to also open up and say, yeah, you know what, I do need help. This is a tough semester.
Yeah.
I would like someone just to even talk to.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the unaddressed mental health issues is probably one of the, especially for men, it's like they're unaddressed for a reason because there might be some shame or guilt wrapped around some of those things. Being able to have somebody reflect to you that it's safe and it's acceptable and it's permitted to talk about them, it really models a sense of confidence that gives you the permission to let yourself be helped, which sometimes can be a challenge.
Absolutely. So how was your transition coming here to Chicago? Given this is a Chicago podcast, we need to ask, how long have you been here in Chicago? How's Chicago been treating you?
I just hit my 3-year anniversary 2 weeks ago. Okay. So I've been here for about 3 years and 2 weeks. And it was a rough transition. So when I graduated, it was kind of like at the tail end of COVID. I was like, okay, excited to go start my real life and, be a full-time adult. And at that time I was with my partner and she was going to do an internship at U Chicago. And I was like, okay, if she's going to Chicago, like, what am I going to do? Am I going to stay in Kalamazoo, which was where Western was located? Am I going to go back to Grand Rapids? Or am I going to try to, see if I can move to Chicago? And I chose the last option, but it wasn't without much kind of contemplation for what would make the best sense for me. Now, Chicago naturally has more opportunities than Kalamazoo or Grand Rapids, but also at the same time, I was more so I learned everything I could from my university. I'd learned everything I had from my childhood and all those experiences of being in Grand Rapids. I was coming back to that space. As much as I love the city, don't get me wrong, it's such an amazing place. I was I'm ready for something new, to apply all these different things that I've learned into a setting that can actually benefit from these skills. And I started my career in economic development in Chicago in June of 2022, and it was kind of a fast ramp up because I had been job searching for a little bit, and a month later something hit in Chicago. It was with a logistic tech firm, and I had been excited to start that job, but at that same time, I was like, I'm gonna start today. And it was actually, I remember it was June 11th. That was my initial start date. So it's funny because we're kind of a week out from June 11th, and June 12th. The Economic Development Organization called me and they're like, hey, are you ready for your last round interview? And they had ghosted me for a month. Them calling me and telling me I have a last round of an interview and I could schedule it, within that same week. I was like, okay, yeah, let's go ahead and do it for June 13th. And I scheduled the meeting, and, I end up showing up to my last round interview, getting the job on the spot, quitting that logistics tech company, and then coming into this organization, really kind of feeling okay, I'm empowered to take full responsibility for my career, to take some bold bets on what I really care about. And at that time I was at the intersection of business and community, and I was really excited about the possibilities to support small businesses, but also to think a little bit beyond and also say how do I leverage this business degree in order to think about, this sort of economic empowerment angle of how businesses can help communities.
Billy, thank you for, this incredible journey that you've painted so far. But your journey still hasn't ended. Right now, here in Chicago, you're helping businesses. Can we talk a little bit about that? Because that's actually really interesting to me. And given we had Cesar Tondini, which is an entrepreneur here in Chicago. What is your role in that really look like?
Yeah. So today, a lot of my efforts are focused on supporting startups, literally from all different types of sectors. And there's really kind of two different pathways that I support startups. The first is community engagement and community building. So even just this year, I've hosted multiple different conversations across multiple different verticals to help highlight market trends. And this is really for founders, operators, investors, corporates, ecosystem partners. We're looking to understand, like, where are we headed as a society? Where do I play in? What exactly is the new technology? And things in the startup ecosystem are always constantly evolving and changing. And the good thing about being able to get a pulse check on where they are is that you also get just a snapshot of the communities that really lean into these conversations, truly seeking to position themselves to succeed. So there's that aspect of it. But then the other part of it too is a lot of investor relations, investor engagement. And Chicago has a network of a lot of different investors, but we also have investors on the coast and, investors that are outside of Chicago that deeply are passionate about the startups we work with, about the mission that we have. And on that side of things, just this week, we just wrapped up our Consumer Tech Innovation Week. We had an opportunities for investors to pitch their thesis to startups. So this is investors telling startups, like, here's why you should take my money, right? Not all money is the same. And sometimes startup, might assume that the only types of investors out there are venture capitalists. These are people who take equity for exchange of cash, but there's also venture debt. There's also angel checks. There's also a range of other different capital solutions that can help a founder accelerate their business, but it just kind of depends on where they are, what specifically they need, how strategic of an alignment there is between them and that investor. So being able to help facilitate those relationships has been also another aspect of my job. And coming up a little bit later this year, we'll be doing an emerging tech showcase where we'll have founders pitching to investors. And I'm excited for that because that's also just another catalyst to help founders fundraise, to help them think through exactly.
If people want to get more information on this and connect with you, what's a good way for them to do so?
I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, so they can always just connect with me there. It's at Billy Ndizeye, so you can always just
I'll throw a link.
Type my name in. You definitely find me. If not, you can definitely just connect with 1871 on our LinkedIn page as well too, or go to our website. There's certainly more information there.
Yeah, that's really awesome. Given we're here in the by the College of Business and Technology at Northeastern, have you done any work with us at all? I mean, if not, something I can look into.
Not yet, but I'm always excited to kind of explore this conversation.
Awesome. Well, to go back to your story and kind of what you're doing here within the business space in Chicago, I think one question that really hits close to home with me is, you mentioned your grandmother, you mentioned her faith and how strong her faith was, and it helped guide you and help be, this guiding light. How have you really maintained your faith through everything that you went through as a kid, through your transition, from or movement from, Africa to the United States here? How did you maintain your faith during that time, and what are you doing now?
To keep it up? Yep. Okay, so I've thought about this question in multiple different dimensions, and as a kid, you naturally maybe kind of lean on the faith of the pillars around you because it's such a easy way to say, like, their belief is my belief. I'm gonna lean on their strength for my strength. And as I got older, the really pivotal point for me also kind of has to do with probably the hardest time of my life. So my grandma passed in 2019, and at this time, it kind of reopened some wounds for me, right? My mom passed when I was young. My grandma was like my mother figure to me, so her passing also kind of unearthed this kind of like deep, why me? Why am I going through this? And through that time, I mean, I had really kind of the option to abandon my faith, to think, this is, I'm kind of cursed. There's no easy way to put into context as to why the world is fair if my grandma, who was a saint, could pass away, right? But through that process and through her transition and, through me also coming to understand, like, who do I want to be, I came to realize, like, my grandma didn't come to her faith as like as an accident. She had it tested many times, right? You lose things that you really care about. You have life not go the way you want it to. You have setbacks. You have moments of obstacles, and you start to realize that the tests of your faith refine who you are. They become those trials that help you get a very clear picture as to what is really most important in your life. And her passing made things very, very clear that even if I was at school, even if my troubles seemed very distant from me because physically I was fine, mentally I should have just been grieving, I realized there was an element to me that I needed a bigger sense of why than just doing it for myself. And that really sparked a renewed relationship with my faith. Her passing was a huge catalyst in me kind of realizing that I was brought this far for a reason, and I'm not gonna make it this far. I'm gonna go further because there is something for me on the other side as well too. And I lean on my faith in times when I'm not quite sure where to go, or in times when I know that I can't do it alone in order to walk through doors that I never thought I could, in order to, speak with conviction that I don't even know where it comes from. It's one of those things where faith has brought me very, very far in my life. And, I don't know where I would be without it today. And to that same point, I mean, the way I maintain it today is that it is a practice. You have to make a conscious effort to make time to both be grateful for the blessings that you have, but you also have to make time to serve the things that you truly have in your heart back to God, and to say, hey, God, like, I'm in this position. I've, kind of received this guidance, but I'm not sure. This door is open in front of me, but I'm afraid that I'm going to fall in between here and that door. Like, how do I bridge this gap? And so, yeah, it's taught me that you don't need to be perfect. You don't need to have all the right answers. You don't need to, have life go easy. But if you have some faith, things at least, tend to end up working out.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's a breath of fresh air to see the strength that you have, or the strength that you gather from your faith. I think it's sometimes difficult for people to like be open and talk about it, but the way that you just described it, man, it's definitely something that I'll carry with me today, and hopefully the viewers find some value in these words. You are not alone. Sometimes you're given these tests, these trials, these this adversity for a reason, to shape you into the person that you need to become, that God wants you to become.
Yeah. And I'll just add one last point. I mean, like, I think oftentimes, like, there is other people on this other side of your faith who need that same belief. Now, for my grandmother, it was probably us and her kids and so many other folks in our community that leaned on her strength and her being a pillar of, like, the moral compass in order to kind of be the glue for all of us. But even as I've become an adult, and as I've learned, like, I'm walking into a room and I'm speaking for somebody who can't be here. I'm speaking for somebody who wants to be here, or maybe I'm, the only perception that these people might have of a specific type of person. And you realize, like, I'm not going to do it perfectly, but I'm going to ask God for the strength that, like, hey, give me the words so that I am able to show up with integrity. I'm able to speak with conviction. I'm able to move and, push somebody to see kind of the other side of.
Appreciate that. And to maybe dive into, right, this emotion that we're in right now with this conversation. What would you say to little 7-8-year-old Billy right now? If you were to look back at him and say maybe, either words of wisdom or words of encouragement, what would you tell that?
Oh man,
that little kid.
I was such a clown back then, and I don't think I was quite ready to hear anything I would have to say today. But if I was, to go back and to speak to 7-year-old me, I would probably just say, like, you're capable of a lot more than you think. You have, way more to share than you know. And do not discount the blessing your identity is, because, for a long time, it just kind of was like, oh, I kind of felt invisible to myself, if that makes sense.
Oh, wow.
Right.
Yeah. That's really interesting. Yeah. Because even as kids, right? How do we identify ourselves within our community, within our family? How do we start to identify ourselves, really, and what our next steps are going to be? But yeah, at that age, 7 years old, we're busy.
Yeah. I would ask you the same question. I mean, like, it's so hard because I feel like if I was to go back even just 10 years ago, I would have so much different things to say to myself. And a friend of mine asked me, what would I tell my I guess now would be 36-year-old self. I don't know if I have any good advice for that person, because I'm hoping they have it figured out.
I have good advice for you. No, it's really good. Yeah, man. I've thought about that question myself. For me, when I was 7, I was this stuttering, little shy Mexican kid. One thing that I would tell myself would be, have more confidence. Have more confidence in your walk, your demeanor, your speaking, those small goals that are making you, those small achievements that are making you the person that you are. I remember one time in like 7th grade, they were giving out certificates at the end of the year, like who read the most books, who got the most A's. And I kid you not, man, they must have called my name like 10 times. But by the 6th time, everyone was just like, bro, Fidel, just stay up there, yo.
Stay up there.
Stay up there.
Smart kid. I mean,
I didn't even recognize that, right? I didn't even recognize what I had done that year. And when they were giving out those awards at the end of the year, I'm just like, all right, I've been busy. And that kind of lit a little bit of a fire with me in like 8th grade and in high school and in college. And education was always one of those things that was in the back of my mind. Like, what am I going to do next? What am I going to do next? Not to, switch gears too much, but given it's Juneteenth and we're lucky enough to have you here. What does this day mean to you? What symbol or message does this day give to you, or maybe should give to others?
Juneteenth to me is really a reflection of the resilience and the endurance of the Black community. It's both the symbol of how far Black community has come, but how much further there is still to go, because at that time, back in Galveston, when they got the news that slavery was over after the Civil War, and you kind of think about the different paces of the world that were happening at that time, right? Back then, there wasn't text message. You can't, just instantly tell everybody, like, hey, happy Freedom Day, slavery's over. In this day, we still kind of live in a fractured world where there are certainly innovations that are looking to hyperspeed us into the future, take us, into a world where everything completely looks reimagined, but we still have folks who don't have access to internet in our day-to-day life, right? We still have the wealth gap at astronomical levels. I mean, I think I saw yesterday that the average wealth of a Black family in Chicago is $0. Not like 1 or 2, 0. And this is collectively, as in combining everybody together. So the amounts of progress that have been made are real. They're tangible. They're reflections of the resilience that, kind of embodies the Black community. But the distance we still have to go to still kind of argue for the same things. I mean, you and I can both sit here and recognize in 2020, everybody was energized to step up, to mobilize, to act, to change, right? But many of those efforts petered out once we ended up entering into a new climate, and, Target recently pulled back their DEI efforts. There's been so many companies that have started to kind of roll back their commitments, and you think about, it wasn't in their DNA in the first place. So it wasn't even natural to them.
Something they were trying to force.
It was something that they were trying to force, and you think that the argument is like, it's a good marketing tactic, but it's not. It's just one, the right thing to do, but then two, it's also crucial for the fact that a better society comes by treating everybody equally. Yeah. And it starts by acknowledging the past, not just like being like, oh, we didn't see what happened in the past. It starts by saying, yeah, we did actually segregate and create, red line districts. We did have, unfair housing practices that ended up creating ghettos. We did have all these different measures that ended up stifling Black communities. And in order to have a society where that's not the case, there are measures that need to be taken as far as policies. But yeah,
I really like that, where Juneteenth is not only a symbol of how far, we've come as a people, as a nation, but also what's still more to do.
Yeah.
There are still things to address. Food deserts, access to internet, access to healthcare, to, good education, access to other opportunities, and for us to still leave room for those doors, right?
Yeah.
Still leave rooms for avenues for people to continue to grow and hopefully one day even provide us their hero's journey.
Yeah, because there's so many talented people that don't have access to good resources, and you can imagine, somebody you grew up with being smarter, talented, more athletic. Like, I know so many more kids who are like well positioned to succeed, but the doors of opportunity just never opened up in their favor, and that is really an unfortunate fact. Yeah. It is not. It's something that can be addressed. Like, it can be avoided for sure.
Absolutely. Well, hopefully, we can echo your message or your story of resilience. Hopefully inspire, another kid, somebody else to tackle on, the adversity that they've overcome. To start to wrap up our session here today, is there a message that you'd like to give our viewers?
Yeah, I would say a lot of my journey has, really come to understanding the power that you own is your voice and your story, right? Storytelling is becoming a lot more important in today's age because, one, it is both a catalyst for you to share with other people what you've been through, but it's also one of those things that we need more perspectives to join the conversation in order to combat some of the misinformation that's out there, some of the disinformation that's out there. And so I'll just say that your voice is your power, right? Use your voice in order to speak up. And I know it seems like a trite thing to say because everybody has something to share, and sometimes not everything is valuable, but truly, when you find your voice, you really do find your power. So lean into who you are authentically. Not like
for sure,
not for show, but authentically,
really
and let that be your power.
Authentically, yeah, definitely. Well, thank you for that beautiful message. Thank you for sharing your story with us here today. We look forward to sharing this on our platform with our viewers. And with that said, I wish you a happy Juneteenth.
Happy Juneteenth.
All right, take care, everyone. Catch you on the next episode of The Hero in the Mirror.